Feliz Navidad. Welcome back to Ray's Talk Show. Welcome back to Ray's Talk Show. Ray's Talk Show brings leaders, inspiration, and resources to help you find wealth in your voice. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're looking for a community to support you through personal development, career growth, and online platform building, you've come to the right place. Thank you so much again for joining us here on our first daytime blab, just because of our personal schedules. We tend to do this in the evening when the family's asleep and we have a little free time. But again, because of our personal schedules, we're really excited to be live here on Blab during the day. Thank you so much for joining us. This is your virtual big brother, Ray Collazo. Again, for those on the Blab, Evan, Sci-Fi Funk, Asaya, thank you so, Albert. Thank you so much. And we're going to allow those people to join in this conversation live and direct, boy, as we used to say, in a moment. And again, those listening to this as a podcast, we always super appreciate our podcast listeners. Thank you so much for downloading this episode of Big Brother Ray's podcast. But you know what? One day soon, y'all, you got to join us on the live stream version of the show every Tuesday and Thursday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, and as well as special episodes like we have here today at blab.im/Ray's podcast. Again, that's blab.im/Ray's podcast. You can chat and even join the show via video conference. Get down with the blab now, y'all. Well, this episode of Ray's Talk Show is being done the Monday before Christmas. And we want to help our Rays of Light get ready for Christmas, the holidays, and really get into the right mindset to get your life right in 2016. That's right, get your life right. No doubt about it. And who better to get us in the right framework for the future than our very special guest, Dr. Dinorah Nieves. Dr. D, welcome to Ray's Talk Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is so exciting. And again, I know we're going to have a great conversation. And I know that as I was telling my dear friend, compadre Obo Garcia, I'm going to be as much a listener and someone that's going to learn from you as the host of the show today, no doubt about it. Dr. Dinorah Nieves, also known as Dr. D, is a certified wellness practitioner and life coach known for her edgy enlightenment. That's going to be an interesting part of the conversation about where she gets that edge from. And Dr. D guides you to optimal results with her synthesis of insight and spiritual training mixed with some spunk. Okay, girl. Dr. D will be revealing later in the show her trifecta, which is going to be your foundation for 2016, so you don't want to miss it. But first, again, Dr. Dinorah Nieves, welcome again to Ray's Talk Show. Thank you again for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is so special. You know, I have to give you kudos for putting this platform together because it really is so important for us as a community to really stay in tune with what we need to do to learn and grow. So first of all, thank you for doing the show. And secondly, thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you so much. It's a long time coming, and always great to have one of our Latina super women giving us that guidance, because as I share with people, between my wife and my mother, I've had a strong Latina woman be my boss my whole life, and I've done pretty well for myself. So no doubt about it. So Dr. Nieves, it's so great to have you on the show today. We know that, and again, thank you again for folks chatting your questions on the side here. We'll get to all of them for sure, and we'll get you on the show. We know that this journey didn't start as a nationally recognized speaker, coach, wellness practitioner. So Dr. Dinorah Nieves, where did this journey begin for you?
I am your typical Puerto Rican girl, born in the Bronx, raised in Yonkers. My whole life, you know, a supportive family, well-meaning community, but pretty much familiar with the struggles of growing up in, you know, modest economical situations and the public school system and your day-to-day average reality for most of us out here, which is one of the things that I really cherish about my background, because I do have a connection to a lot of the people that I end up speaking with, meeting with, talking with about this work. And that really is it. It's the work of really taking care of ourselves, of building our daily practices in a way that complements our health and our spiritual wellness and our physical wellness and all of the other dimensions of our wellness that really keep us centered. And for a very long time, which gets us to our tagline, for a very long time, I felt like this was one of those esoteric sort of abstract things that, you know, people did in the Himalayas or, you know, in the yoga studios in California somewhere. And I kind of grew up with that reality. You know, it's nice to be centered, but I was more on the sassy side of things. You know, I grew up in an urban culture, and it was all about, you know, being loud, being heard, and being witty and being funny and being sassy. And that was a big part of my personality. And I didn't think for a long time that you could blend the two. But I've spent a long time figuring out how to blend the two, which is why my tagline is centered and sassy. And that's why I sort of brand myself with this idea of edgy enlightenment, because you don't really have to give up your personality to take on some of these centering practices and really start to feel centered on the inside.
Well, that's such a great point. So, and it's interesting because, again, you have your PhD, and I would imagine that the going through academia, much less, your professional career, that probably wasn't an easy. I think there's a lot of, particularly women, but particularly a lot of people from our community that are trying to figure out how to be themselves as they sort of move up.
Yeah.
And so I would love to hear some thoughts about that, especially in the career you're in, which, again, when you're in academia and you're pursuing, an area of work that has been considered very esoteric and unfamiliar to a lot of us. Yeah. How do you be able to keep that balance of who you are with the kind of work that you're doing?
I mean, it's really important to figure out your negotiables and your non-negotiables. I don't think that people talk about that enough. When you go into any world, particularly institutions that have a cookie cutter way of doing things, you're going to have to learn to navigate that world. And that may mean making some changes, and that may mean making some sacrifices, and that may mean making some alterations. And so you have to really search inside yourself and figure out what you feel comfortable with changing, altering, what are the things that are not really that important that you don't have to hold on to, that you feel comfortable letting go of. And then you have to really think about what are the pieces of me that I feel are true to my soul, are true to my spirit, really speak to my joy, and figure out how to hold on to those things. And I think once you make that determination, and as you get older and wiser and search deeper and deeper, it's easier to make those determinations between what are your negotiables and your non-negotiables. But I think when you do that, it's a lot easier to navigate the terrain.
Can you give us an example of what you mean by maybe something that either you let go or you've seen that is something that's helpful to kind of be in the, because I can imagine that for a lot of people that there's that doesn't sound like a pleasant process because everyone, you know what I'm saying? Because you don't want to feel like you're losing your essence, but give us an example of a way that's impacted your career.
I'm going to give you a silly example, but only because I think it'll make it really easy to digest, right? Sure. So I grew up in a keeping it real culture, right? We're aggressive and we're loud, and I used to curse every other word, and that was kind of how I communicated. And, in urban culture and contemporary urban culture particularly, that's not offensive. That is our way of communicating, and we do it sort of organically, and there's not much to it. When I got into a more corporate society, and I communicated in the same way, even if it wasn't cursing every other second, but certainly with a lot of bass in my voice, certainly with a lot of strut behind my words, right? And really, really confident in what I was thinking and what I was saying. And I came off a lot of times as opinionated and aggressive, right? I had to learn how to speak in a way that made the things that I was saying easy for people to hear. Now, that didn't mean that I necessarily changed the things that I was saying, right? My negotiable was the way I communicated. My non-negotiable was what I was communicating about. So if I felt strongly about something, excellent point. Yeah, if I felt strongly about something, if it really hit my core and it touched on a value and it meant something to me, I wasn't really necessarily willing to sit through a meeting and not speak on it, right? But I did have to learn to negotiate my style of communication. What were the ways that I could engage in a conversation with someone else that would maximize the likelihood that that person could hear what it was that I had to say? And I had to learn that was going to be different in different settings and different surroundings. And it took time, but it's an important skill, an important tool to be able to implement when you're moving back and forth between a lot of worlds,
I'm going to give you, for myself, the opposite example. So I totally appreciate your, and we grew up very similar backgrounds where, throwing on a certain style is acceptable and kind of part of the thing, deal. But with my personality that I grew up in Catholic school my whole life. And so, college. And so, it's kind of funny because my parents were such total opposites with this vibe. But the bottom line is that, it was like, hey, go to school, stay in line. And that's the way you're going to get out, basically. I mean, and as I got older, I realized that I was getting frustrated because I didn't feel I was having my voice heard enough in a work environment. And then because I was holding stuff in, then when I did express myself, it was like the top came off, and it was like kind of over the top, and it was because I had all this pent up frustration that I wasn't expressing. So do you see in your work with your clients, do you sort of see the both extremes, your perspectives?
Absolutely. And I tell people all the time, repression and self-control are not the same thing. It is one thing to have a self-discipline to you, an ability to mold your thoughts, your words, your behaviors so that they really move you forward towards whatever your agenda is. It's another thing to keep things inside and let them fester and let them bubble. And it can really feel disempowering, and it can really feel disillusioning. And like you said, it often results in people sort of exploding. Which is the least thing that you want to be doing when you're in a situation where you want to be heard or you want to move forward, because it really does turn people off to hear you explode. So really, both ends of that spectrum are dangerous. Being too loud or being too quiet, right? You really have to find a way to be centered. Right. And the word, no pun, but to be centered is not just about sort of being this little yoga figure, that's illustrated in a logo. Right. It's about really finding the center between taking up too much space and taking up too little space.
Yeah, no, I'm coaching a Latina professional on some of this stuff because she has a great message that she needs to get out, because she really wants to help people that grew up in, particularly, for lack of a better term, strict religious sects.
Okay.
So in her case, in a very conservative Pentecostal church. And so she feels like she's straddling not just the ethnic piece as a Latina sort of in the mainstream world, but even more distinctly, like, sort of moving up in the career secular world as she's, trying to balance. She doesn't want to do anything to how would you say, go against her faith, because she's still very involved in her church. Right. But at the same time, she doesn't want the people in her congregation to hide from the world. And she sees that a lot. So she's trying to figure that out. So it manifests from a lot of different parts of our background. Absolutely. And that's why we have people like Dr. Dinorah Nieves to help us think this through. Another part of this, before we get into your 2016 guidance, Dr. D, is that one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on the show, and I wanted you to share for a few minutes your experience, this transition for you. 2015 has been a big year for you.
Yeah, 2015 was huge.
Yeah, because you went from being a senior level manager in a very prominent nonprofit organization to sort of jumping off the cliff and being a full-time coach and speaker and author full-time. And I'd love to hear a lesson or two from that experience, because that particular group, that particular dynamic is one of the reasons I do the show. Yeah. And building my personal brand, because I see so many people, particularly in our community, particularly in the nonprofit space, who, they feel like caged birds. They have so much talent, they have so much they want to give, and because of the parameters of their job, they're just very limited. So, Sway, we're gonna, if you don't mind, we're gonna take guests in the second half of the show, but definitely stay on, and you'll certainly have a chance to talk to Dr. D. So talk to us about that part of your journey this year, and any lessons you'd love to share with people,
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great. The biggest lesson that I've learned, and I sort of am still learning it, and I can't stress it enough, is that our belief in ourselves, right? Whatever you feel really confident about is a divine steering guide, right? That, when I envisioned this journey and where I want to go, I didn't think of it as like, wow, that's a nice goal, right? I almost saw it as like a premonition of like, yes, I am meant to do this. This is where I'm headed. I know this is what I'm for. And unfortunately, what ends up happening to people, and a lot of people start that way, and what ends up happening to people is along the way, you end up reaching out to people and being rejected. You end up putting your products or your services or whatever outcomes you're working on in the hands of someone who may not be ready for them at that moment, or may not necessarily see the vision or appreciate them. And that's fine. And I think that we need those things. They keep us fueled and they keep us motivated and they keep us improving. But when you give too much energy, too much time, too much attention to those things, you can really start to feel low on yourself. And so what I've learned is that other people's validation or lack thereof is not necessarily an accurate indication of the value of my work. And that's really, really important for people to keep in mind, because I'm sure that I've certainly rejected or not picked up on something that someone else has done that's been equally valuable. And people have done it to me. I've done it to others. They will do it to others, because we're not always in sync with one another. We're not always seeing everybody else's vision quite as clearly as they are. But that's okay. It is not anyone else's responsibility to see our vision as clearly as we see it. What we cannot do, though, is let their inability to see it clearly affect our ability to execute it. And that has been for me the biggest lesson. And I've been really blessed, because I have certainly had over the last 12 months a plethora of people who have been able to see my vision and have jumped on board and have been really supportive. So that's been great. But I've also had those very, few moments where I sort of think, maybe those poems aren't good enough for the New Yorker, or maybe whatever. And I have to step back and say, oh, maybe not at this moment, maybe not with that editor, maybe not that line I wrote, maybe not right now, right? But certainly that doesn't mean that it's not valuable or it's not important, and it doesn't mean that I can't still grow, and it doesn't mean that it won't still happen. So just keeping that perspective, I think, is really, really important when you take these leaps of faith.
Yeah, wow. There's books there in that answer, Dr. D.
Yeah.
My goodness, I'll share with you that in the last couple of years, I've gone through so many emotions about it, and I think probably the biggest thing is that, and I've kind of about 2.5 years into this journey, that quite honestly, I feel I wish I'd taken the leap already. And it's, when you have family and you have certain responsibilities, it's tough, and we all kind of go through that. And I have to first of all be okay with, we all have to, things happen in due time. Yeah. And you have to be patient and confident in yourself that you're doing the right thing. And something that you and I have talked about in other conversations, and I want to give our homegirl Idita Rodriguez, who actually was on Facebook talking politics with me this morning. We have to get her on here. She's not only a businesswoman, but a minister in her church. Awesome. Is that she often talks about how we live 95% in fear and 5% in faith. We need to flip that paradigm.
Yeah, that's it.
We need to live in faith and knowing that. And I know when you were in the middle of, when you were getting your parachute together because you were about to jump off the cliff, you were saying that, I'm going to be okay. I got a lot of good family. I haven't done nothing to nobody. The universe is going to vibe with that. And, on to, fans and haters and all that kind of stuff. Look, the most successful people have the most critics. So that's the bottom line, so you have to live with that. But particularly I wanted to, before we get into your foundation for 2016, trifecta, Dr. D, and again, we're so happy to have you. Just the last word on that transition, again, for my nonprofit managers, maybe they're executive directors or senior managers, or just people that are looking to do something new and they're frightened out of their minds. They have an idea, they don't know how to do it. They just don't know where to begin with the mentality of this. Just another word on your experience for those folks.
From the logistic perspective, I would say start to grow your business. As soon as you know that you might want to shift careers in the future, start to grow your business. My saving grace is that by the time I decided that I was going to pursue consulting full time, I already had a reputation. I already had almost a decade of experience in coaching and teaching at universities and writing. I had already been getting my feet wet all along. And so when it was time to really take that leap of faith and jump off the cliff, there were really people waiting at the bottom, with sort of soft landing, spaces. And there were people on other cliffs, saying, here's a parachute. And it was so it was still a jump, right? And you still need the courage to take the leap, but it was certainly an easier leap to take. So I think that my advice would be to anyone who's thinking, you know what I want for my future is a drastic departure from where I'm at now. I would say start getting your feet wet, start looking for volunteer opportunities, start looking for internships, start looking for part-time placements. Start looking for ways to get involved in the careers that you would like to pursue, and start building those networks, building that experience, building those skill sets, so that when you are ready to take that leap, there's a soft place to land. Yeah,
that's right. And it's actually when you have a day job and you have on some level that stability, it is the best time.
Yeah,
to sort of it's like an artist, a comedian. You're working material. I mean.
Yeah. Absolutely.
This journey for me has changed 3 or 4 times in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have been at the place where I'm at now if I hadn't started. So even if and I'm going to be doing a show in February with another expert around time management, and we were going over an exercise the other day, and just an initial overview of kind of how we use our time. You can free up about 3 months a year.
Oh yeah,
and it's not even that hard. You know, I mean, it's it's just one of those things. But
can I just
Evan,
make a quick? Oh,
yes, no, please.
I was gonna say, I'll just make a quick comment on that too. I tell people when I do my wellness training, I'll say like, oh, definitely work out, right? It helps you build your energy. And they'll say to me, well, I don't have time to work out. I work a 10-hour day. And I'm like, well, do you work a 10-hour day because you have to be there 10 hours or because it takes you 10 hours to do your job? Well, it takes that long. And I say to people all the time, well, working out really builds your vitality, right? Meditating really builds your vitality. There are a lot of wellness practices, and I'll talk about this in a minute, that really build your energy levels. And you really could be doing what it takes you so long to do in a much shorter time, and then have time left over to take care of yourself. But often we don't take care of ourselves, and then we lag through our days, and everything takes longer, and we spend more time doing things we hate doing. And then we pat ourselves on the back at the end and say, well, I put in a hard day's work, right? Even though it took me 12 hours to do what I could have accomplished in 7. So we really do need to take notice of the way that we spend our time and really use it in a way that helps us to be more productive and to take better care of ourselves.
That's absolutely right. And again, you're listening to Dr. Dinorah Nieves, a wellness practitioner, author, artist. We have to get into that at some point in this conversation, and consultant, motivational speaker, and our ray of light for today. And she's sharing so much here. We're so grateful to have her here right before the holidays, getting us in the right mindset. And in a second, she's going to share with us her trifecta as the foundation for getting it right in 2016. Let people know, Dr. Nieves, where they can find your social media, and shout out your web platforms out there so people can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Dinorah Nieves on all of them. That's DINORAHNIEVES, and you'll find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And again, this is your virtual big brother, Ray Collazo. You're watching Ray's Talk Show on Blab. Thank you for the folks that have hung in on the show, and I promise I'll definitely let people shortly get on and talk directly to Dr. Nieves. I know Ken Evans has a great question here on Focus that we're going to definitely get to. I know he had to step away on the actual Blab, but he was very active on the chat. So thank you again, Evan, and thank you again for joining us. For those interested in your virtual big brothers, Ray Collazo, and his our Big Brother Ray community, check out rayspodcast.com, where you can find the replays of these shows on video, as well as our podcast. Today, Dr. D, I released an episode I did a few weeks ago on stopping hate, and what I think is some of the important factors for us to sort of overcome this crazy world we're living in now, and how we need to come together. And there's lots of resources there for you as well, even a Christmas list for those looking to get books and materials for loved ones and yourself to get ready for 2016. Got all kind of resources there, so definitely check out rayspodcast.com. And we've actually, because of the holidays, we're doing a few shows here right before Christmas. So tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern, Liz Garcia, who's a fellow coach based out in California, Dr. Nieves, I want to connect you with. She's going to be talking about life and brilliance. She started her podcast recently, so definitely someone you may want to draw on for inspiration and some tips, as well as one of our great New Rican social media cats and urban Jibaro himself, George Torres, will be doing my nighttime show with me tomorrow night at 10 p.m. So if you're into social media and having those kind of conversations going into 2016, definitely check out George Torres on Ray's Talk Show. Dr. Nieves, so we've got you teed up here. We're trying to get in the right mindset for 2016. And
Yes.
You have a trifecta, which is going to be our foundation for getting it right in 2016. And the first element of that trifecta, from your perspective, is getting your mind right. So share with us why that's so important, and help us get our minds straight for next year.
Yes. Well, it's important for a lot of reasons. I'll come from the economic side first, because that's always the first thing that people hit me as a problem, right? But really in today's economy, you have to be more ready than ever to think outside of the box. And unfortunately, what we find constantly is that because we're not giving our minds the exercise that it needs, people are sitting and struggling with problems in sort of a traditional way and not really thinking outside of the box. So what I suggest to people all of the time is to really learn how to be creative. Take time to really nurture the creativity inside. As adults, we really very rarely sit and doodle or write a poem or sketch something. And I will say to clients all the time, why don't you take out a sketch pad? Well, I don't know how to draw. Okay, I'm not interested in selling your art, right? This is really an opportunity. It's really an opportunity for us to start to connect with our creativity, because it's not just about the art or the poem or whatever product is the end result of the hour that we sit with ourselves or the 15 minutes that we sit with ourselves. It's about really expanding the way that the different parts of our minds connect with one another, so that we can be more productive when we're looking at issues that strike us as sort of unsolvable, and think outside of the box about how to solve them. So for 2016, I keep saying to people, one of the key things that I'd like to encourage is for people to learn to be more productive, to take that time and go back to some of the things that they really enjoyed as children and really nurture their creativity.
It's interesting you say that, because I don't know if I had ever written a poem, and I wrote one for one of my sons about a year ago.
Nice.
And I taped it and I recorded it as part of the work we're doing.
Awesome.
And it meant so much to me. Not because, obviously the subject matter was the most important reasons, but it was just such another exercise, another skill I had never felt would provide me any value. But I wanted to stretch myself. I wanted to do something different.
Good.
And it was really rewarding. And again, I don't think I'm ever going to be it's never going to be probably a big part of my,
you never know,
of my platform. But like you said, you never know, right? And you never know if it changes one person's life, then it was so worth it, right? Including yourself. So what's another element of getting our minds right, Dr. Dinorah?
Meditation. I can't say it enough. A lot of the clients that I talk to, a lot of the family and friends that I talk to, they spend a lot of time fighting with their own minds, right? A lot of their time is sort of eaten up by the thoughts that they have that are not helpful, and how they can really fight them. It's a fight. It's an all-day fight. And I say to them all the time, the best thing that you can do is really learn how to meditate, because what you want to do when you meditate is shut your mind down. And in that moment, it's just like any other muscle in your body that you're exercising. What you're learning to do is exercise and strengthen your mind, so that you can start to sort through and sift through all of the thoughts that go through there all the time, and figure out what's real, what's not, what has some basis in reality, what is completely made up by my ego, what are things that I should be thinking of, what are things that are not worth my time, what are things that I could do that are helpful, what are not. But you have to have some ability to sift and sort through those thoughts in order to get rid of the ones that are not helpful and start to pursue the ones that are. So really taking the time to meditate and learning how to do that in your mind is a really, really important skill.
So this is where the keep it real part of the conversation comes in, Dr. D.
Let's keep it real.
For people that grew up the way we grew up, and they hear that meditation stuff, and they say, that's for other people, or that's pretty, or that's BS, or, that's what it is. So for someone that has that skepticism of how that fits into their life, what's your advice to them to overcome that, or how do you address that obstacle? Because I'm not saying there's not a value to it. It's never clicked for me.
Yeah.
And so help me and other people that, and I'm not even against the skeptical about it. I just don't feel like I'm doing it right, or I feel corny. I don't know what it is. So help people that are trying to take that step to try to see how it fits in with them.
I'm glad that you said that. First of all, I love the word corny, right? I spent so much of my childhood trying not to be corny, and I've spent so much of my adulthood getting to corny. and loving
Getting the
corny.
corny. I love
And
that quote.
corny is awesome, right? Like, I don't know how to tell people enough that corny is cool, right? That all those things that I used to think were so corny are so helpful. And now I'm spending all this time, instead of trying to be cool, trying to be corny, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely agree. Meditation is one of those things that's perceived as sort of like what, rich people do in the mountains somewhere while their kids are in school, right?
Some people feel it goes against their spiritual tradition.
Right. And some people feel
which
like
is another part of that,
Right. But again, the meditation, and specifically when I speak of meditation, I'm not talking about anything that has any kind of religious undertone. I'm talking about you being able to sit inside of yourself. There is absolutely no God that you can worship that would not want you to have a relationship with yourself. And that's exactly what we're talking about doing, is building that relationship with yourself, being able to control what's going in and out of your own mind. And so to people that try to practice it and feel like they're failing, all I constantly say is keep trying. When I first started, I used to sit, and it was the most comical conversation you ever want to have in your head. I'd close my eyes and I'd be like, all right, I'm going to think about nothing. Okay, I'm thinking about nothing. Wait, is thinking about nothing, is saying that I'm thinking about nothing the same thing as thinking about something? Okay, no, wait, now I'm really thinking about nothing. Okay, stop thinking. Okay, wow, I just did it. Oh crap, now I'm thinking again, right? Like, and that was it for like on and on and on and on, an exponential amount of time. That little conversation would just go crazy. Yeah. But the more that I did it, the more that I was able to sit in those quiet moments for a little more, and then a little more, and then a little more, and you get better and better and better at it. Mm-hmm. So when you feel like you're not, you feel like you're not doing it, you are doing it by just taking the time to do it. And the more that you do it, the better that you'll get at it. And eventually you'll start to realize that there is a significant difference. It might not happen the first time you meditate, right? It's probably not going to happen the second time you meditate. But by the third time, you're like, I might be starting to get the hang of this. And then you continue to do it. And I tell people all the time, it's going to save you time. It's going to give you more energy. It's scientifically proven that it helps your health. It gives you more energy. It even makes your sex life better. So I keep saying to people, I don't understand why we're so resistant to something that science has told us time and again is helpful to us. Now, if other people have things that are more helpful, then yeah, you should do that. But if people are searching for something that might work, then you should try this.
The second part of the foundation that you're laying out for us today, Dr. Dinorah Nieves, about getting it right in 2016 is getting our body right. So talk to us about the health aspect of this, of your trifecta here.
Yeah, working on how you feel, which is so important, because a lot of times when we talk about 2016, we talk about New Year's, we talk about resolutions, we talk about goals. Everybody's trying to get their body right in terms of looking better. Right? Everybody wants to shed the pounds that they, gained on the holidays, or everyone wants to basically put themselves out there and be sexier for the spring or sexier for the summer. So everybody is working on getting their bodies right. But what they really mean is, I want to look better to other people. And what I keep saying to people is, what you want to do is feel better for yourself, right? So you want to develop a routine that really works to help you feel better. Don't diet in a way that's going to help you lose weight right away. Diet in a way that's going to help you incorporate foods that really increase your energy levels. That's what you really want to do, right? Work on your proteins. Work on eating foods that help you feel better. Now, don't get me wrong. Everybody in my, they make pasteles and,
oh God, to be Puerto Rican at Christmas is the worst.
And arroz con gandules.
I'm saying that out of
yesterday. Yeah, no, I know.
I mean, it's tough.
Don't I know it, right? So I'm not saying that you can't enjoy your occasional, treat, or your occasional nostalgic dinner.
Yes.
Right, but you really want to have a daily practice of eating foods that help you feel better, right? Right. And then the other thing that I would say about your body is working out. Right? That there is a significant health benefit to working out. And that can look any kind of way. You can go to a yoga class, right? I have a treadmill that sits right next to my sofa that I just get on with my Amazon Prime and watch, The Good Wife or whatever is on. So you can do any number of things. If you are in an area where you can hike, I always suggest that, because nature is so soothing. But anything. Yeah. I mean, I tell some clients all the time, if you love the mall, commit to 5 miles at the mall. I've done 5 miles at the mall. It'll take me a few hours, but I'll stop.
Especially in the winter, right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not a bad deal.
do 5 miles at the mall. It's absolutely worth it. So, but get that regular routine of exercise into your day, and make it something that you miss when you don't do it, right? Even if you have to trick yourself. I have certain shows that I only watch on my Amazon Prime when I'm working out. So the next day I'll be like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens on the next episode. But I know that in order to see that next episode, I got to get my behind on that treadmill. So I get on the treadmill, I turn on my Amazon Prime, and I'm on to the next episode. So find what works for you, but definitely make sure that you're working out.
No, and well, this is so central to everything, because the bottom line is about it is about time, because we fool ourselves to think, okay, I don't have time to work out because I have so much to do. Well, it's like you said, if you were practically speaking, before you even get into why it's important for so many other reasons, if you were healthier, you'd be so much more productive. So like you said, you could do that, what you're doing in 8 and 5. And then the other reality is, I've come to grips with this year, is that if you want to do something for 8 hours, you can do it for 8 hours. You can do it for 6 hours. You can do it for 5 hours. At the end of the day, you're making a choice. And yeah, sure, and some of us, have certain commitments for work and things, sure. But you always can find the time if you want to find the time. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Well, and I say this particularly to parents, because I feel like for parents, this is a really easy, important analogy to understand. Right? You have kids, right?
Yeah, 2 little guys.
So so you'll get this, right? I don't have children, but I definitely understand this, because I have a niece that thinks I'm her daddy. And I get this. I understand this, and I tell my clients, if I ask you, do you have time to feed your child? You would never say no, right? Now, your day may be long and you may be tired, right? But you love that child, and you understand it is your responsibility to care for that child, and you would never let that child go unfed because you had a long day, right? But for whatever reason, we're taught to think that that's appropriate because we brought them into the world, so we have to take care of them, but we don't have to take care of ourselves, right? And ultimately, sometimes we even feel guilty taking care of ourselves, right? But the reality is that when something... Yeah, absolutely, with women especially. So, but the reality is that when something is important to us, we figure it out, right? We figure it out absolutely with no hands down. So if you make working out a priority, you will find a way to fit it in. But the first step is to make it a priority, to really deep down inside hold it as something that's important.
Yeah, the one for me, I've gotten better with the exercise piece. But the one I really have to figure out, that I have to prioritize, because it is important, is the sleep. Because I'm trying to, do the side hustle thing, and, prioritizing early evening for family. And then, I do the show at 10, and, if I was disciplined, I could get to bed before 11:30, but you don't want to cut people off on here. You're enjoying what you're doing. You're building a community. So this is, it is what it is. But so that's one of the things I have to work on. So
I will say this about sleeping. Meditation helps with that too. So, it doesn't cut your day shorter, but it certainly helps you get to bed faster, which is really important, because a lot of people who have long days take those days into bed with them.
Yep.
And then they take a long time to fall asleep from the time they actually got in bed, because they can't shut their brain off. And that's one of those skills that you learn as a person who meditates regularly. You have more control over those thoughts. So when it's time to shut them off, you know how, and you're strong enough to do it.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because my mind definitely races. So it's one thing to get to bed, but then really to have a restful sleep. The last part of your trifecta for getting it right in 2016, I love this one, Dr. D. Soul. Get your soul right.
Yeah. This is the reality. We are all connected to one another, and we are all connected to the energy that created and sustains this world. I'm not really interested in what religion you're a part of, or whether you're an atheist and you believe in science. It cuts across all of that, right? There is an energy that's created and sustaining all of us and everything that's around us, right? And so tapping into that energy and tapping into that connection is an important part of the work that we do, right? So I tell people all the time, 2 really easy ways to do that: be grateful and be kind, right? Be grateful and be kind. Studies show that people who are constantly and regularly grateful for the things in their life have better physical health, have better romantic and familial relationships, right? Enjoy their jobs more. So there's no downside to this. Finding ways to really make lists of the things that are in your life that you're so grateful for, or taking an opportunity when you see something as a challenge and seeing the benefits of it and finding the positive aspects and being grateful for that, right? Gratitude is a really, really key ingredient in soulfulness, right? In a soulful connection to the world. And then the other thing that I say all the time is kindness. I can't stress it enough, you know, especially like I'm a homegrown New Yorker, right? And now I live in California, back and forth. I'm bi-coastal, and I see it all the time, that the difference in New York, we're always sort of on the go and everything is really moving fast paced, and you know, we pride ourselves in not taking a moment to even look at someone else or speaking, you know, to someone else. We just keep it moving. But if you really take the time out, you'll see there are a lot of nice things happening. So I tell people all the time, random acts of kindness. You know, my niece sent me a text message one day, or a Facebook message, saying that she got a note from someone on the bus saying, "You look beautiful today, and you should pass this forward to someone for whom you feel the same," right? That's great, right? We should do more of that. We should constantly be posting compliments on Facebook or on Twitter, finding ways to open doors, or stop for a second and say, "I like your shoes," or whatever it is, you know, doing something that's really kind for someone else, even if it is just something that puts a smile on their face.
Oh, Dr. D, you know, this is this part of the conversation has really been the theme, particularly in November, of Race Talk Show, because I had a specific episode related to gratefulness and the, you know, sort of how do we live grateful? You know, we could say that it's something you kind of say, but how do we live it? And I'll share with you that, you know, I was my birthday was in November, and
happy belated.
Oh, thank you. And you know, there was a part of me that was struggling with how to feel about it, because on one hand, I have so much to be grateful for, family, health, you know, my family's health. I mean, just so much. And on the other hand, you know, I do want to move this forward and be where you're at now as a full-time entrepreneur, and really, you know, do something really special with this. And I must say that what kind of straightened me out was the feedback I got on Facebook. I mean, there was a handful of, you know, I mean, people are generally really nice, and you get a lot of, but there was a handful of people that recounted specific ways I had impacted their lives. And with a few circumstances, I had little idea that, you know, things I had done that, you know, didn't cost me anything years ago, a little mentorship, a little advice, a little friendship, a favor, something. And they recounted that on Facebook, and it was so nice of them to be so giving to me. And it kind of woke me up to the fact that it's not about that I have to be grateful about the life that I'm living. And it's just my frustration is coming for just not having the platform yet to share it more broadly, you know? So, and people like you, I mean, I started this show because I felt guilty, because I had all these great friends like you and Zoe and all these people that we know. And I said, they're kick ass. They're from the hood. They're doing something with their lives. And our community doesn't know, you know, they may know them from if they're related to them, or they just don't realize all the, you know, that their neighborhoods have produced people like this enough. So I want to share and get your message out there to so many people. We have people from 4 different continents on this blab. I don't know if you see the map function, so it's quite something. But the other part of this, and I want to welcome again the people watching the Blab Live. We're opening up the chairs now, so we want to encourage people to join us and be part of this conversation about the trifecta of mind, body, and soul to get it right in 2016. And as people are deciding, see if anyone will take us up on our offer. I wanted to ask you, Dr. Nieves, a gentleman named Ken Evans, who had to step away, had a question for you. He's a serial entrepreneur that feels like he has a issue with focus. He's passionate about so many things, but he feels like he has to focus. So what's your advice in this framework about helping people focus in 2016?
Okay, I hate to throw the meditate thing out again, but I do say, you know, meditating is one of those things that does help with focus. Stop rolling your eyes, Ray.
I know. I got to overcome it. I got to overcome the corny. I got to embrace the corniness. I know.
You got to embrace the corniness.
I know.
You know, I'm definitely one of those people too that has like a million ideas. And if I sit for an hour, I can have a million ideas and I want to pursue them all. They're all hot. I'm excited about all of them, right? But at some point you have to figure out where you're going to allocate your resources, your time, your energy, your money, to really start to move one thing forward, and then other things can come from there. So I would say a few things. Again, meditation is a great way to start learning to focus. But the other thing is to really, really get a sense of what brings the most joy and start focusing there. Because I think sometimes what we do is we come up with, 10 ideas, and then we'll get pulled in 20 different directions on each of those ideas because we're thinking about what would the market like, what is going to be an easier thing to secure, what am I going to, have a harder time with, right? And we start to get into all of those different criteria, and then we are everywhere. And I think the best way is you have an inner compass that's always going to guide you toward your joy. So really, really sit and think about which of those projects brings you the most joy. When you think about where they're going, when you have, an opportunity to work on them, what gets the biggest smile on your face, what gets, the most zhuzh in your spirit, right? What's the thing that gets you most excited, and start there.
So on that one, so one of the things that I've somewhat experienced, or the emotion that I've kind of tried to address with this, is that I hear what you're saying and I agree with you. But then what happens is, as you dive into this process, especially as you start learning or trying to learn best practices around, in this case, like internet entrepreneurship or being self-employed, is that on some level, it doesn't feel like what you're most passionate about is the most marketable. And so you always hear about that trio around match your passion with your marketability with your audience kind of thing. So how have you sort of balanced those different factors?
Well, the reality is that you can really lose yourself if you work on what's most marketable, right? Because 9 times out of 10, what's most marketable is probably not what you intended to bring into this universe. Otherwise, you would have been a hit already, right? So really, it's really, really important.
I tell you from the Bronx, you got them lyrics, girl. You got them lyrics. There's so many great quotes in this conversation.
Right. So, but there's a reason why you're not, right? Because you're bringing something unique to the world, something that they're not hip to, right? And that's important. So don't use your unique value proposition in what's marketable. There is a way to merge the two, right? There's a way to find how to package what you bring to the world in something that's going to be attractive to other people. But that's not the same thing as trying to figure out what's attractive to them and then putting that in the package. That's not the same thing, right? So the important thing about focusing on the project and on the product is to figure out what did you intend to bring to the world, right? And then once you've got that, then the marketing comes in terms of packaging, not in terms of content.
Excellent. Another part of and again, people that are watching, I think we have a brave soul here. Let's see who's joined here. And my site is a little slow for some reason. So
I know, I have to tell you, Ray, you're very talented with this ability to keep up with the chat and the video stream at the same time.
Well, we're doing our thing here. So
yes, you are.
That being said, again, anyone that's on the blab, feel free to join us and talk directly to Dr. Nieves. The other part of your soul piece I wanted to ask you about, because I was curious about it, was one of the tenets of that trifecta for you is self-awareness. So can you talk a little bit about what you mean by that and how it fits into sort of planning for 2016?
Yeah, so self-awareness is a big piece of all of those things that I mentioned, right? Because the reality with self-awareness is that if you don't have some sense of where your strengths are and where your limitations are, you won't be able to implement much of anything that I've said, right? Or anything that I've suggested. You really have to have a keen sense and a confidence in being able to say, this is where I'm strong and this is where I struggle, right? And the people who are lacking self-awareness, right? Because those are the people who say, I know, after you suggest something, right? You should really try. Oh yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, no, what if you try? Oh yeah, I know. Right? So you don't want to be one of those people. You want to be a person who really has a keen ability to look at their lives and say, this is where I'm strong, but I'm really struggling here. How can I improve in these areas? What do I need to implement to get myself moving towards my goal, towards optimal health, productivity, happiness, life satisfaction? What do I need to do in those areas that are going to be helpful, and not be afraid to take that step?
And that for solopreneurs, leaders, that's so hard, because
I know
it is a challenge, because on some level, we feel like we don't have the resources to either the confidence or the resources or the space to ask for help, because that really gets into, and I deal with it with this every day. It's like, I don't have, I got all kind of responsibilities. I've got, my money tied into a lot of other things. Do I have the ability to either ask? I don't want to ask somebody, but at the same time, I got to pay. So it goes back and forth. But it's I heard someone say, and I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Hyatt, who's who would be is a very big thought leader in sort of the online leadership business space, and he had a great quote. He said, "Look, when you identify what you need, it's amazing how the resources pop up." So it really is about being transparent and authentic about what your strengths are and the kind of help you need. And it's amazing where the help comes from, because the other part of this online journey, which has been so incredible for me, is that I think people are using this medium even more and more for this kind of collaboration, because the offline world is sort of riddled with so much negativity that they're looking for this kind of camaraderie. They're looking for this kind of support. And I find all kind of people that want to be supportive. So how does that fit in my feedback to your vision for this?
No, absolutely. That's an important piece of it. I tell people all the time too, we struggle, particularly us, because we're in these areas where we need to be perceived as experts to be successful, right? And so we struggle because there's this box that we've put experts in, where if you're an expert in something, then you cannot be needing information in that area either, right? And so people are afraid to ask for help. They don't feel comfortable or confident asking for help, because there's this perception that if I ask for help, then I will lose my credibility. But it's crap, right? I don't want help from any expert who can't ask for help, because the fact of the matter is that knowledge is infinite, and any expert that knows anything at all knows they don't know everything. So it's really important for us, particularly when we're in a field where we're considered an expert, to be able to be vulnerable, and to be able to ask for support, and to be able to ask for help. I tell people all the time, being an expert in the field doesn't mean that you know everything. It means that you know how to access the things that you don't necessarily know, right? And that's an important thing for us to embrace and to feel comfortable with.
That's exactly right. And in this last segment of Ray's Talk Show, SD3 Design, Mr. Freeman, and some of these other folks that have been watching, we really appreciate you helping. Joining us and listening to Dr. Dinorah Nieves get us right in 2016. If you'd like to join, feel free to step into the chairs. We're giving people that opportunity.
Yes, please
ask
come
questions
talk to me in person,
live and direct. So in this last segment, and again, we want to wrap up the podcast element, and we'd like to get your voice on the podcast. So feel free to jump on here, and but we'll definitely stay on to answer questions after we stop taping as we wrap up the show. The last thing I want to touch you about, what's so interesting about your biography, Dr. Nieves, is that you're an artist. You're very talented. There's poetry and just a painting, drawing. So talk to us about how that part of your personality impacts your work as a wellness practitioner.
Again, it's that piece of being creative, right? It's the importance of being creative, of keeping your mind stimulated, of really being able to look at things outside of a traditional box. So I love to write and I love to draw, and I'm a decent artist and a decent poet. There are certainly better. But one of the things that I really enjoy about writing and about drawing is that it gives me an opportunity to look at things from sort of a new, a different, a fresh perspective, right? And to play with them and to really take things less seriously than we're inclined to do in our professional environments. And I think that's really important. I think it's really important, particularly in a world where we are so pressured to advance our careers and to be professional at all times, right? Having a moment where you can really just play and see an outcome of that play, that's really, really helpful. The other thing I love about art and I love about poetry, and I'm sure that you'll get a sense of this too, Ray, because you probably feel this way about your podcast and your live streams, is that when you do it, it's done. right? And for me, as a life
Okay.
coach, as a wellness practitioner, even as an author now working on this book manuscript, it's very difficult to constantly be pouring your energy into something and never see sort of an end product or an outcome. And one of the things that is good about it is you really learn to enjoy the journey, right? Because if you're waiting for a product, you're waiting forever, right? So you really learn to enjoy that being in the moment in that process. But at the same time, it's nice to have something where you can work on it, you can play, and then it's done, and there's something to show for that time. So I really like that piece of the poetry and of the art.
That's really cool. And one of the messages I get to our artists out there, people that are creative like you, and I have one of my brothers is a pretty well regarded international independent hip hop artist. He's traveled all over. I mean, he's not a gazillionaire rapper, but he's traveled all over the world and been to Australia, Europe, all over the United States many times. And he's touched a lot of people with his music. And I admire people like you and him and others that have that creative side, which is really cool. Is that, especially in with the modern tools, I feel a lot of times people have to understand artists are not destined to be starving artists.
Yeah,
there's lots of ways you can adjust your vision, you can adjust your mindset, so that you can profit from your talents and skills in the creative space. And I love that people, and we want to continue those kind of conversations, Dr. Nieves, with you and other people that have that part of their personality that's very marketable. And the other thing I wanted to sort of emphasize to people is that one of the things that I got out of this conversation with you today, Dr. Nieves, is that, it goes back to something that being grateful doesn't mean you're satisfied.
Oh, no, absolutely.
And that's a balance that I think oftentimes, again, I go back to the spiritual element of our community, where you have to be humble. There's a strand of, which is a beautiful thing on the surface in terms of, being humble, being grateful, being appreciative of what you have. Even if you live with humble means, what have you, but that doesn't mean like that's where you end the story. You have to continue to share it with more people, because like I often tell people is that I encourage people to podcast and get out there more, is that, even if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, if you don't do it, you're being greedy, because you're not sharing all these unique gifts that you have to share that can impact other people. So it's this is such a wonderful time to have this conversation. As we wrap it up, Dr. Nieves, and again, we really appreciate the people watching on Blab, listening to the podcast. Any other final thoughts you may have for our Race Talk Show listeners?
I'll just say, spend a lot of time getting to know yourself and figuring out what feels good to your soul. I think that's a really, really good way to lead and to follow in terms of your spirit and your path and your journey moving forward. I don't think that we do that enough. And when people talk about feeling good, they often talk about things that are supposed to make them feel good, but don't really last very long, right? The partying and drugs and alcohol and, and then feeling good takes on this sort of selfish idea. But when I say feeling good, I really mean feeling good deep down to your core, right? That feeling you get from being kind or from being grateful or from being happy with who you are and the life that you've created. It's so important. And I think that we've lost sight of that as a society. We don't focus on that. We don't make that as a priority the way that we should. So really, if that's not your priority now, please start looking for a way to make 2016 a new beginning, and to really give yourself the time and the energy that you deserve, because I think we all have a lot to contribute. And as you started to say, Ray, and it's such a good point, we cheat the world when we don't sort of live to our maximum capacity.
So, Dr. Nieves, again, your final thoughts.
So my final thoughts are just really be true to who you are and take care of yourself in 2016. I mean, I know that that taking care of yourself has sort of taken on some sort of selfish connotation, right? People see it as not virtuous or not honorable to be concerned with oneself. But in actuality, as you started to say, Ray, we all have so much to offer to each other and to the world. And when we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not operating at our maximum potential. And it really does a disservice to our communities, to our families, and then to ourselves. It's really detrimental. So really, body, mind, soul, I mean, all of it is an important priority to set for 2016. Instead of worrying about looking good or worrying about doing well, start worrying about feeling well, and start worrying about feeling good, and making that a part of your daily practice, and ensuring that you are really giving yourself everything that you need and deserve to be happy.
Absolutely. And this has been such a timely conversation. I get so much out of Ray's talk show with our wonderful Rays of Light, like Dinorah Nieves. Dr. D, let people know where they can find you, tap into your services. And, you're definitely available for a wealth of products and services for clients and companies, and let people know where they can find you.
So I'm available for coaching and counseling. I also teach at universities and facilitate trainings in all areas of wellness. And you can look at me at my website, www.dinorahnieves.com. That's DINORAHNIEVES.com. I'm also Dinorah Nieves at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So please connect with me whenever you can. And if I can be helpful in any way, I'm always happy to do so.
Absolutely. And one of my New Year's resolutions, that's part of my goals is we got to get Dr. Dinorah Nieves a bigger presence online. You have so much to share, whether it's blabbing, podcasting. We got to get you out here more. You bring a lot to the table. So
thank you.
We're going to find you. We're going to definitely help you collaborate and connect with other like-minded people as much as possible. Kevin and other people, thank you so much. We're actually wrapping up the podcast part of the show, but we'll stick around if you'd like to say hello to Dr. Nieves real quick. Again, thank you so much for joining Ray's Talk Show. If you like what you heard, if you like this kind of mentorship, this kind of inspiration to help you find wealth in your voice, definitely check out rayspodcast.com. All of our content is there, our resources, our podcasts, our videos, as well as you can subscribe to Ray's Podcast on iTunes, Google Play. Well, in early 2016, we'll have our podcast available, so a lot more exposure on the Android side, which is really exciting. And if you want to reach out to our community, you can always email me directly at podcastrays@gmail.com. That's podcastrays@gmail.com for advice, mentorship, and connecting with a wonderful Rays of Light like Dr. Dinorah Nieves. Dr. D, keep doing your thing, girl.
Thank you, Ray. So proud of you. Thank you. Yes, you are such an inspiration. So I really appreciate you having me, and I really appreciate all that you're doing for us.
All right. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.